There are a lot of people who think science is a bastion of truth because it will only accept things based on undeniable factual evidence. So what do they do when confronted by the undeniable factual evidence that science does not? It would be illogical, unreasonable, and exceedingly unscientific, indeed, to simply ignore a huge amount of existing evidence just because you desperately want to cling to a theory that is overwhelmingly proven wrong by that evidence. And yet a certain section of science and its ardent supporters do exactly that in order to cling to a theory that is very much at odds with all the existing evidence. Darwin's On the Origin of the Species, from which we get the theory of evolution, makes for very interesting reading. You can actually download a copy of it free from the Gutenberg Project website. In it, Darwin himself admits that existing evidence is quite contrary to what one would expect if his theory were true. Most of his theory is actually taken up with trying to convince people why they should ignore the existing strong evidence against his theory being correct, in the hope that some sort of supporting evidence might eventually surface sometime in the future. Now, science is still waiting for that supporting evidence to turn up. But what is turning up instead is even more evidence against Darwin's theory being true. Evidence whose existence is quite fatal to his theory. But instead of heeding the evidence and scrapping the theory, there seems to be quite a concerted effort in trying to justify ignoring and suppressing all of the existent evidence in order to cling to a theory that is demonstrably contrary to it. Now, there is really only one explanation for this decidedly unscientific behaviour, and that is that among the several theories that do exist in the scientific community, evolution is the only one that does not necessitate the existence of a God or intelligent creator. Now, while a large section of the scientific community are quite comfortable accepting the creation and intelligent design theories as valid scientific theories worthy of serious scientific investigation, there is a section of the community that would rather cling to an unsupported and unsupportable theory than concede even the possibility that a God may exist. Now, in the Flood of Evidence reality benders, we investigated how the geological evidence does not support the theory of evolution. But there is even more compelling evidence than that, which should have sounded the death knell of the evolution theory ages ago, except that those who are pushing relentlessly for acceptance of the theory as if it were fact simply ignore it and pretend it does not exist. The evidence in question is an abundance of archaeological evidence that simply could not exist if the theory of evolution were correct. It can only exist if the theory of evolution is wrong. The point they are ignoring is that this evidence that is fatal to the theory of evolution does, in your reality, actually exist. The theory of evolution, using its own interpretation of the geological column, is quite adamant that dinosaurs became extinct somewhere around 65 million years ago. It claims that from studying the geological evidence, there was a sudden mass extinction around that time frame. An asteroid strike is the most commonly suggested agent of extinction, but there are other theories also. They are also adamant that man only evolved over the last 300,000 to 5 million years. That is only 0.3 to 5 million years ago. The theory of evolution proposes that the last of the dinosaurs and the first of the humanoids are separated by a gap of about 60 million years in which neither existed. So according to the theory of evolution, dinosaurs had not existed on Earth for at least 60 million years before anything resembling even primitive man ever existed, and with nobody to record their existence. Let's make that clear. For the theory of evolution to be true, mankind could never have had any direct knowledge of dinosaurs other than what modern science has only recently pieced together from fossilized fragments of millennium-old bones. So if the theory of evolution is true, evidence that mankind and dinosaurs coexisted and interacted, or even of early primitive or scientifically naive man knowing about dinosaurs cannot possibly exist. Such evidence can only exist if the theory of evolution and its reading of the geological column is wrong. So why do the followers of evolution theory totally ignore the abundant existing physical, archaeological evidence that mankind and dinosaurs did coexist and interact in relatively recent times? Evidence that declares their theory to be quite wrong. Before 1842, there was supposedly no concept of the existence of dinosaurs at all. There are reports of the occasional large fossilized bone being discovered before that, but no idea as to what or where they came from. In other words, our current knowledge of the existence of dinosaurs comes only from bones dug up and examined and scientifically analysed since 1842. Therefore, there should not be any possible knowledge of dinosaurs and what they looked like prior to 1842 unless people actually saw and interacted with live dinosaurs in relatively recent times. But investigate and judge for yourself that this abundance of evidence that proves the theory of evolution to be quite wrong does actually exist in the reality you live in. A good place to start is always that massive collection of OOPArts, or out-of-place artefacts, found at saint.com. They have even prepared a small e-book on the subject at the website shown on the screen. You can peruse it yourself for free. Then there is the picture-perfect Stegosaurus, engraved on the doors of an 800-year-old Buddhist temple from the Khmer civilization. Also, the clear engravings of what science can now identify as dinosaurs on the brass inlays of the 1496, that's 15th century, tomb of the Bishop of Carlisle, Richard Bell, in Carlisle Cathedral, in the UK. Or the cave drawing of a dinosaur by North American Nazi Indians around 150 BC to 1200 AD, before contact with Europeans. Or the Mesopotamian cylinder seal, dated around 3300 BC, that has images of what science can now identify as Apatosaurus. Or how about this Shang Dynasty jade carving from about 1766 to 1122 BC that is unmistakably a stylized depiction of what science now knows to be a Saurolophus dinosaur. Then there is the Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime story painting. Note the typical depiction of the internal organs, which is normal for Aboriginal art for those animals they hunted and ate and were therefore on intimate terms with their insides. Then there is the 33,000 or so pre-classical Chupacaro culture figurines from around 800 BC to 200 AD from Acambaro, Mexico. Or the 16,000 or so Inca ceremonial burial stones thought to be from the Nazca culture, often referred to as the Ica stones, as they were found near Ica in Peru. There are at least 11,000 of them in one collection alone. Now, some people want you to believe one or two people with an awful lot of time on their hands sat down and forged all of them to sell to tourists. But some have been tested and found to be authentically ancient. It actually only takes one such genuine artefact to disprove the theory of evolution. But there is a huge amount of similar evidence out there from all sorts of sources and cultures from around the world, and I can't include much of it in a 10-minute video. However, it is a mountain of evidence you can easily investigate for yourselves if you are seeking the truth. Evolutionist science and its die-hard adherents simply will not accept the possibility their theory might be wrong, and so treat all the massed evidence against it as flawed or hoax or forgery or misunderstood or irrelevant, etc. Indeed, anything that might at a stretch serve as an excuse to dismiss it from serious investigation and consideration by them. In their minds, the theory will never be disproven because they simply will not accept any of the existent evidence that does disprove it. But this veritable mountain of artifacts and evidence does exist in the reality you live in. So your choice is to believe what a certain section of science tells you, or believe what the evidence tells you. Now, normal science says you should heed what the evidence is telling you. The thing is, the evidence is telling you loud and clear the theory of evolution is wrong.